let. Oh, okay. Perfect. Yes, Isaac, please.
Okay, perfect. Sorry about my microphone. I think it's not working maybe properly today, but I will try to speak up loud. So this is the agenda for today. Welcome to our 14th IMIM webinar. So I'm gonna give you a short welcome and introduction to our master. So it should take around 5 minutes. And then I'm also gonna introduce our keynote speaker, Dr. Ebru Susur. She will have the keynote, and then we will go to a Q&A session afterwards. Of course, you're always welcome to participate along the way and or write in the chat your questions or activate your microphone. So it's totally open, but in any case, we will dedicate some final minutes in the end. And of course, the closure and the invitation for this. So today, our webinar is about circular business models towards a transition for a circular economy. So the idea is to discuss the dynamic of these innovation mechanisms and how these circular business models emerge, and especially how innovation takes place when we talk about this topic. So I'm very happy to have here, and thank you for proposing this topic to Dr. Ebru Susur. She is a program professor in UPM in the School of Informatics, and also she is the academic coordinator in IMIM Master Program. So she coordinates things related to research, to our master thesis, our innovation ecosystem. So she's very, very active, and she has contributed a lot to our program. She holds two PhD degrees, one from Politecnico di Milano in Italy, and one from Politecnico University of Madrid in Spain. She is a professor currently in UPM, and also a senior consultant at the European Commission and the French Agency for Development. Her research focuses on innovation management, sustainability transition, business models, circular economy, digitalization. So besides teaching, she does some consulting, as you can see, and she's quite the expert to deliver this talk to all of you. So we hope that you enjoy. So from UPM side, the school that we both are affiliated to, we welcome you to this IMIM webinar. So you know that we are a multi-site master program, which combines the best of management with engineering skills. We have been recognized by the European Union with the Erasmus Mundus label for educational excellence. And currently, this is a program structure. So if you are interested, or you know somebody who's interested, maybe you can drop in a field for them so they can contact us. So students, they come to UPM to study the first semester, then they travel to Edinburgh Business School in the UK. So there are two campuses of Heriot-Watt University, where is the Edinburgh Business School located. One campus, obviously, in Scotland, in Edinburgh, and one in Dubai, where students can go on the third semester if they want to have a specialization in supply chain management or logistics. On the other hand, if they would like to have a deeper understanding of engineering and finance, they can select to go to Politecnico di Torino in Italy. If they would like to know how to do business in Asia, especially China, they can choose to go to our partner NTU in Xi'an, in China. And finally, if they would like to specialize in innovation, they can go to the Monterrey Tech in Mexico, where they offer 3 campuses in Mexico City, Guadalajara, Monterrey. And finally, the master thesis, this is very flexible. As long as they have a tutor from any of these universities, they can have a university-based academic thesis or do an internship, and then continue to do their master at the same time. So our students come from all around the world, as you can see, mainly from Asia and Europe. And graduate students, they have very good career opportunities. These are just glimpses of the companies where they can work As you can see, many sectors, both in manufacturing or services, and very top employers, big brands, smaller companies, or many of them, they also create their own companies. So we have some entrepreneurs as well as part of the graduates. So if you would like to know more, I just invite you to keep in touch. This is our email, iim@industriales.upm.es. We have social media. The name is very easy to remember, Master IMIM, in Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, or you can also visit our website for further information. As you know, the webinar like today, this is the number 14, but the previous webinars, they are also available for you if you want to revise something or if you want to learn about other topics in our YouTube channel. So here is the link, but you can also write us, and I will be writing this information in the chat along the way, but you can also write us in case of any more doubts or information. So I think from my side, that would be it. So I would like to give the microphone to Dr. Saussure and thanking her again for accepting this invitation to deliver this interesting webinar. Thank you.
Isaac, many thanks. Now I will try to share the content of the presentation. Let us see if it works. Does it work?
Yes, we can see it. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. So, just a second. Yes. There is a okay. Isaac is sharing the contact information. Okay. Well, many thanks for joining us today in our 14th webinar. Actually, this is very exciting. When we started this initiative last year, we were like, will we be able to achieve it? How many webinars we need to organize? How we will be contributing, and so on and so forth. And we have been able to organize already 14 webinars. And today I would like to talk to you related to the circular business models. Lately, we started talking about circular economy and circular business models quite a lot. And most of the organizations that I work with, as well as like my students, my colleagues, the other professors, the policymakers, the practitioners, well, we have one common word, no, which has become a kind of buzzword: transitions towards circular economy. Sometimes we call it circular transitions, circular economy transitions. So what are they actually, right? What are we talking about when we talk about this kind of transitions? And more we hear about circular business models. So what is their relationship with the circular economy, and so on and so forth? So in this study, my ambition was try to understand and hopefully explain that. First understand myself and then explain and share it with the audience. Well, just to motivate you a bit, I will be starting with giving you a background of the study, and then I will be talking about the research objective, because this is an outcome of a research project that I have been carrying in the last 2.5 years, I would say. And then I will give information related to the methodology, the methods that I have been following in this study. Later, I will try to detail the theory elaboration, the results of the systematic literature review, and finally, a conceptual framework adopting a transition perspective on circular business models. Okay, so just the background. Yesterday, I do that from time to time. I also suggest you doing that if you would like to learn about the trendiness of the concepts that you are interested in, right? As the topic of today is circular economy, circular business models, I was like, let's check how trendy is circular economy. So this is like the past 5 years. I have checked business and industry sectors. I have used Google Trends. It's basically writing circular economy and go search, right? So we can observe a kind of increasing demand on the search for this concept, circular economy. Okay, it has gained a momentum. like a decade ago, and the momentum still keeps on. The concept is still very popular and relevant and high on agenda. It's traced with many members of the society. But do we know what circular economy is, actually? Right? We all talk about circular economy. It has become a kind of buzzword in the end. Well, it's most of the time the destiny of words like that, right? It was the same with the sustainability. It was the same with sustainable development. There was a time while we were talking about blue economy, green economy, right? Eco-design, efficiency, industrial ecology, industrial symbiosis, industrial ecosystems. Then somehow this concept has emerged and it has been basically sweeping all the other concepts. And it has become like an umbrella concept that's integrating all these different conceptual understandings and also practices. But the problem is, before understanding what blue economy is, what performance economy is, what industrial ecology is, industrial symbiosis, industrial ecosystems, it was not understanding very properly because of its wicked nature, the sustainability concept. We started talking about circular economy and the concept has become so successful. That's true. But what does it mean, actually? You may want to ask this question to yourself as well, right? While watching this webinar. Well, there is no single definition of the concept, okay? So I have been trying to somehow gather different definitions to come up with a comprehensive one. And I may argue that circular economy can be approached as a novel socioeconomic system that will be replacing the traditional linear socioeconomic model. And how it will be replacing it? Different circularity strategies, basically. And not only on the production side, but also at the consumption, the use side. Maybe that's the key part why this concept has become successful, okay? The first pillar that it differentiates from its antecedents is that it has a very deep focus on the consumption part. It really highlights this part. And the second is perhaps the word economy that's already embedded in the concept, right? It was somehow attracting the businesses as well. And the concept itself has been able to demonstrate some of the economic related profits of adopting this kind of sustainability practices. Another differentiation factor of circular economy is it's approaching consumer as the user, not traditionally as we do like the client or the consumer, but actually we are all users. And approaching the conception side from the using perspective actually engages with the consumption side. And they have become also a part of the overall industrial system that we have been embedded in very deeply since the Industrial Revolution. Right? But in the end, we cannot avoid that. It has become a blurred, highly contested, buzzy, perhaps a wicked concept. What's circular economy? What's circular? What's not? How can we measure circularity? All these questions have been high in academia as well as in the practitioner side. And it has been a challenge for the policymakers as well in that sense. Okay. Well, maybe some of you have heard about this circularity strategies approach to circular economy. Okay. Some people talk about 3 R's, some talk about 4 R's, 6 R's, 9 R's, 12 R's. Huh? I prefer to use for today the 9R perspective. Starting with the refuse, this can be considered as R0, basically just to refuse, to consume. Then R1 is rethink, then reduce, reuse, repair, refurbish, remanufacture, repurpose, recycle, and recover. So as you see, there are many different R's. So it's not only about recycling, as most of the time we think about when we talk about circular economy, right? And the research shows that the innovation in the core technology increases actually when we go towards this side. Recycling, for instance, needs more innovative, more technological innovation, more innovation in the technology side. For the rest, actually it's about product design innovation, revenue model innovation, and it's more about socio-institutional change. Perhaps we are not talking about the technical change here. We already have the technologies available there for realizing this kind of transition, but it's not happening. Why not? Perhaps we still do not have the proper revenue models. We still cannot see the ways to generate revenue over these more sustainable ways of producing and consuming. Perhaps what we take as normal is not in line with what circular economy is suggesting. So the normative rules of the society. Perhaps like culturally, and our cognition is not ready for perceiving, understanding, and implementing this kind of solutions. When I say our, I'm talking about the producers, I'm talking about the users as well, and all the actors that are distributed on this value chain. And it's a long value chain. And then there is another concept, okay, the business model, which has become so popular as well. And lately, because of the trendiness of circular economy, we started talking about circular business models. But another problem comes out. We hadn't had a proper definition of business model beforehand. It's another fuzzy word, okay, which gains lots of traction. Everybody talks about business modeling, but we are still not very sure what it is, okay? This is a very generic, very comprehensive definition of business model that I would like to give you today. So we can define a business model as a simplified and aggregated representation of the activities of a company or industry. What do I mean with that? Business model can be defined and operationalized at the company, at the organizational level, but as well as in the industry level, right? For instance, we can talk about the business model of the automotive industry. There is one business model, right? A general understanding of how to do business in the automotive industry. The same goes for the electricity industry. The same goes for the water industry. Or you may sometimes call them as sectors as well. Whether or not it's at the company level or the industry level, it has three main components, okay, to generate and secure profitability and the competitive advantage. These two become the keywords here. When we talk about organizations and business, we cannot avoid, okay, having this profit-oriented logic and competitiveness-oriented logic, because we need to survive and, if possible, thrive. And we cannot neglect that we are still living in a capitalistic society. Okay, so we need to capture part of the value that we create and deliver. That's important. And this is the way, actually, how we can take the attention of the industry, of the companies, of the practitioners to these ways of producing, like circular economy. These are the three main components then: value creation, and then strategy, and customers and market, delivering the value to the market. Okay. And another buzzy concept, value. We all talk about value, right? What is the value added? How do you add a value to this project? What's the value in this project? How do we create value? How do we deliver value? How do you capture your value? But what is this, right? Value. Well, in economics, purely, it's defined as the willingness to pay from the end customer perspective, pure economic perspective, right? And it's the embedded definition in our daily speaking of the value as well. So value creation refers to activities that construct and increase the amount of such value. In the end of the day, when the industry and the companies try to create value, the ultimate objective is still to capture, okay? And how to capture it? By increasing the willingness to pay from the end customer perspective. So we cannot be so naive in that sense. We always need to integrate this value capturing perspective when we talk about circular value creation, circular value delivery. It goes the same with the sustainability as well. Okay. So circular business models, just integrating all this, then we can define it as a business model configuration that embeds circularity strategies. Okay. Aiming to maximize the resource efficiency by sustaining the value of products and components in different ways. How we can do it? By closing, intensifying, slowing, dematerializing, and narrowing the resource loops. How do we do it? Adopting different circularity strategies. Which are the circularity strategies? All these different R's that we talked about. And innovating novel business models, and very importantly, reconfiguring the existing ones as well. We do not need to get rid of the existing business models. We can also reconfigure them towards more circular versions, okay? And this innovation process, this business model innovation process, actually constitute the core processes for emerging circular business models. So that's why in this study, I decided to focus on circular business model innovation and trying to understand circular business models and how they emerge within the context of the circular economic transitions. So I argue for the focus on circular business model innovation. How do we innovate circular business models? How do we come up with some novel circular business models? Or how do we increase the circularity of the already existing circular business models? Or how can we transform the existing linear business models into more circular or circular business models? So it's the process of making changes to existing business models in order to develop more circular configurations that would hopefully recapture, redeliver, and recreate, redeliver, and recapture the value. Or perhaps the processes of crafting entirely new circular business models with an intent to create, deliver, and capture this value in novel ways. And I have been checking the priority industries for a circular economy and circular business models. Where can we play in the market when we talk about circular economy and circular business models? Well, the market is quite broad then, right? We can play related to the consumer goods, manufacturing industry is there, providing very fruitful conditions for adopting circular economy-oriented strategies, circularity strategies. Construction is another very important sector, waste management, obviously. And unfortunately, it's the only one, most of the time, that circular economy is related to. But circular economy is not only related to recycling the waste. Okay? This is a very, very reductionist perspective. Okay, and we can also play in the food and biomass sector, mobility, textile, water and wastewater, tourism, so on and so forth. So it seems to be a very broad market where we can play, where we can design circular business models and contribute to circular economy. But in the academia, as well as in the practitioners and policymaking world, there are some questions, okay, that remain unanswered, actually. We're still not very sure how the circular business models emerge and how do this circular business model innovation take place, and which are the underlying mechanisms, okay? Which are the structural components of the circular economy that relate to the emergence of the circular business models, and then how the circular business models and these transitions interact with each other. As for the names, how they are implying, we can directly relate circular business models to circular economy in general, but how do they really interplay? This is still an open question. So that's why I've started this project of mine, basically trying to develop a transition perspective on circular business models. And I have been collaborating with Professor Mats Engvall from KTH Royal Institute of Technology. And we have been co-authoring this paper, okay, which is under review in the Journal of Industrial Ecology. Well, fingers crossed, hopefully we will have the good news soon. Saying that, I would like to shortly introduce the research objective of this study, okay, to conceptualize how circular business models emerge in the context of transitions towards a circular economy. That's what I have been motivating in the beginning of the presentation. As for the methodology, there are two main dimensions, okay, for the methodology of this study. The first is pure theory elaboration, basically based on deductive reasoning. What I mean with deductive reasoning is building on the theories first, instead of observing what's happening in the real world, okay? So trying to define the concepts, drawing the conceptual contours, how basically integrating different theories that are already existing in the field related to the very objective of this study. It's not like an invention of a new theory, but reorientation of different theories towards one common perspective. Because as you may imagine, studying circular economy, studying circular business models, studying transitions, then you need to deal with many different perspectives that are captured by different theoretical families, by different theoretical ontologies. And there you need to find a way to integrate this in a meaningful way to be able to understand and explain this kind of emergence of circular business models within this context of transitions. And it's quite an ambitious task, which requires a very detailed theory elaboration. That's why I have decided to first focus on the theory elaboration, coming up with a conceptual approach, and then checking this approach within the available literature related to circular business models and circular business model innovation. And there we have conducted a systematic literature review. Okay? So we can think of two main dimensions for the methodology: theory elaboration first, and then systematic literature review, in order to trace the proposed conceptualization within the literature to see if it's really relevant, if it really has the capacity to explain this kind of emergence within this kind of transitions to start with. And then of course, one needs to operationalize this framing in a real world through an empirical methodology. Okay, so I'd like to detail a bit the theory elaboration, but it's a bit because it's quite, it can take some hours to talk about it. So the conceptual definitions and theoretical framing has been what we have been doing, focusing on the circular business model literature on the one hand, and the transitions domain from the science, technology, innovation studies on the other hand. Okay, so for the circular business model literature, we have identified the articles that have been trying to define and understand what a circular business model is, how it relates to circular economy, what circular economy is, and so forth. And for the transition studies, we have focused on this field of study, trying to understand the socio-technical reconfigurations that will be delivering this kind of socio-technical transitions in the societal systems. And we have focused on the two main frameworks that have emerged within this field of study: technological innovation systems and strategic niche management, which deal with the innovation mechanisms, dynamics, and functions that are required for the novel innovations to become successful within the societal systems in order to change the existing configurations into new ones. In other words, in order to realize the transitions. Okay, so based on this, we have come up with the definitions of circular economy, transitions towards circular economy, circular business model, and circular business model innovation. And as you see here, I have come up with the three different types of circular business model innovation. One is basically making changes on an existing linear business model to include circularity strategies to make it into a circular business model. The second type is focusing on the existing circular business model, include more or better versions of circularity strategies and ending in a novel circular business model. And the third way, of course, obviously, is crafting a circular business model from scratch, basically adopting the circularity strategies from the beginning. All three types are valid. All three types can be relevant depending on the case and the context. Okay, and based on that, we have identified first, the structural components related to this circular business model innovation process. And second, the dynamic innovation mechanisms enhancing the circular business model. Okay, social actors, obviously, are one of the most important structural components. Who are these social actors? You, me, okay? Let's say the individuals. Then me as the university professor, me as a researcher, Isaac as the coordinator of an international master program, me as the academic coordinator of this master program, then the whole university, okay, the research centers. Not only that, non-profit organizations, profit-based organizations like companies, the private sector, the big corporations, startups, accelerators, intermediaries, EIT Digital, where I'm sitting right now, like an intermediary accelerator of the innovation in Europe, European Innovation Institute. and also the politicians, the policymakers, the municipalities, the local authorities. All of them are related social actors when we talk about this kind of emergence of circular business models within the transition of circular economy. And then the networks that we are creating, very important. Now, here we are creating a meaning altogether within a network, okay? And technology and infrastructure available, as well as the institutions, right? The regulatory mechanisms, the norms that we are taking, and our cultural cognitive capacities, what we take for granted without questioning. How do we function as a culture, as a society? And each context is a different culture, functioning based on different norms. All these are related to this kind of transitions. And on the second component, the dynamic innovation mechanisms, these are derived based on, okay, the niche building processes that are embedded in the strategic niche management, and as well as the innovation functions that are embedded in the technological innovation systems perspective that we have here on the left side. And I have been trying to merge them and reorient them towards the circular business model enhancing dynamic innovation mechanisms. So obviously the first is the experimentation. What do I mean with that? Keeping on creating and implementing new projects, okay, restlessly, and gaining the momentum, and envisioning, trying to come up with a shared vision, common goals, network building, obviously, clearly, learning from each other at the first order and the second order. For instance, today we are trying to realize this first order learning. We have some audience listening to me, and this is basically pure information that's being transmitted to you. And then you will be digesting that afterwards, hopefully, and then you decide to implement it or not. And then we can talk about second order learning only once you implement it. And that's the type of learning that we are interested in order to realize this kind of transitions. Then the protection mechanisms, the subsidies, incentives that are provided to the companies to get into this kind of circular business modeling, the resource mobilization. What can I mobilize as my resources? Now, for instance, I'm mobilizing my time, right? I'm dedicating my time to give this webinar. Why? To provide the audience with this kind of information. And hopefully, maybe later you will be mobilizing your resources. Maybe you will be thinking on adopting circularity into your existing business. Or maybe you will be thinking on doing a PhD related to circular economy. Or you will be thinking on getting registered to the IMIM, our master program, in order to learn more about this kind of topics. Whatever your resources are, they are ready to be there to be mobilized. And if you think of more like higher levels, at the political level, the Spanish government can decide to mobilize its resources in order to create this kind of networks, for instance. Or the university where I'm staying, Polytechnic University of Madrid, can try to or decide to mobilize its resources, right? The teaching faculty, the research faculty, okay? Basically to focus on this kind of projects related to circular economy. We all have different resources. And the question is if we are willing to mobilize our resources towards this kind of future or not. And what are our expectations from this kind of mobilization? And finally, legitimation, right? This kind of thinking should be legitimized on the way, because it's still new and we are still not sure what it embeds, what it entails. And it will be legitimized in time, in future. And once it's legitimized, circular economy and circular business models will be the mainstream, hopefully one day, if it works. Well, based on this proposed theoretical framing, we have decided to run this systematic literature review. It was a search in Scopus, which ended in 222 articles. Then we have conducted a literature screening based on some inclusion and exclusion criteria. Then we have gone through a keyword analysis. Then it was screened again to identify the most cited articles. And in the final step, there were 57 articles to analyze. And based on the cited references as the secondary source included in these articles, we have identified 7 additional articles, which ended in a set of 64 articles in which the theoretical framing is traced. We conducted search in April 29th, okay? And the keywords were circular business, in a business model, and innovation. And in English, choosing the journal as the selected source type. So this has been our literature search string. Based on our content analysis, okay, we have also paid some attention on the keywords that have been included in these publications. Very interestingly, although we have many publications, okay, related to the circular economy and circular business models, very few actually use the circular business model innovation concept, which actually is the intersection point of what we are interested in, circular business model and innovation, which also indicates a need to further explore circular business models and circular economy from the innovation perspective. But nonetheless, we have covered all these articles for tracing the proposed framework in order to come up with a comprehensive and a broad analysis. Our content analysis has resulted in some important indications. We can say the proposed conceptual dimensions, all of them, the structural components, as well as the dynamic innovation mechanisms, have been largely considered within the published research, yet separately and at times implicitly. What do I mean with that? Obviously, these publications have not operationalized all these concepts that we are proposing in this research study, because this research study, of course, was not available before, and there was no framework that would guide them to use all these concepts. But all these concepts have been considered in the previous research, which shows the relevancy of our proposed conceptualization. And circular business models are most often studied and operationalized at the firm level, at the organizational level, not at the industry level. The studies at the industry level remain very limited. Okay? And there is no evidence of an emerging or established approach adopting a systemic perspective, as we are trying to propose here. Okay? Basically integrating these multiple actors, talking about networks, trying to integrate also the institutional perspective, underlying the importance of the availability of the technology and infrastructure, and how all these structural components are relating to the dynamic innovation mechanisms that will be hopefully enhancing the circular business model innovation process. There is no systemic perspective as such. There are some papers just talk about, for instance, local projects that are needed for circular business models, and they name them as experiments. Okay, experimentation, relevant. Sometimes they highlight the importance of network building. Okay, then we understand network building is relevant. Sometimes they talk about having a shared vision and common goals are very important for realizing this kind of transitions, very relevant. But gathering all this together and linking them to each other in order to understand this holistic picture of transitions has not been done yet. Okay? Hopefully this will be the future of this study ground based on this study of ours. And based on all this, we have derived this conceptual framework. Okay? Based on these three types of circular business model innovation, as I explained before, from linear to circular, from circular to more circular or improved way of circular, or from scratch, the circular business model. Through these dynamic innovation mechanisms, experimentation, visioning, network building, learning, protection, resource mobilization, and legitimation, relating to these structural components that we have in the context of the transitions, the social actors, networks, technology and infrastructure, and institutions. Maybe we can try, we will be able to capture this kind of emergence of circular business model within the context of the circular economy. This is the framework that we propose. And we have been also trying to understand how these dynamic innovation mechanisms interact with each other. Okay? And we have been trying to identify different studies and quantify a bit this interaction. Right? And the studies show that all of them are somehow interrelated to each other on different studies. This also shows a bit of the legitimacy of our proposed conceptualization, at least at the starting initial stage. Saying that, I would like to give some research implications, okay, to conclude the presentation. So these innovation mechanisms that matter most may differ from one case to another. And researchers do not need to operationalize all of them altogether. Depending on the contextual requirements, the most relevant innovation mechanisms can be chosen. The same goes for the structural components as well. So our framework does not prioritize any component or any mechanism over another, okay? Or we are not arguing that all these conceptual dimensions should be covered in every circular business model case neither. This can be iteratively and selectively studied by the researchers or by the practitioners. And then a more precise understanding can only be achieved through observations from empirical cases. This will be the second part of this research study, operationalizing this framework in the real cases. Hopefully, our framework can inspire the researchers to refine it in their ways further. And how can you operationalize this framework? What I argue is that it will not be feasible to start by mapping the structural components. Who are the related social actors, which is the network, which are the institutions, which is the technology infrastructure, could be, but I think it's not the most feasible way. Because circular business models in one industry are likely to interact with other ones. They can be embedded in multiple contexts, and there can be many circular business models related to the different industries, which are embedded in a context of transitions, which makes actually quite blurry and fuzzy this identification and mapping of actors and networks and institutions and technology and infrastructure. Perhaps we should focus on the emerging circular business model first and understanding the related innovation mechanisms. Which are the innovation mechanisms that are basically enhancing this circular business model, and try to identify the related actors to these innovation mechanisms. This is one way of trying to operationalize this framework. And then, of course, empirics will further inform the analysis of the dynamic mechanisms. And then revisiting these mechanisms, we will be further inform the structural components. So basically, it will be an iterative, abductive nature of case study. And it's actually the nature for many case-based research. And it's for the managerial implications, okay? Circular business model innovation can be taken as the objective, actually. And it can be facilitated by the proposed conceptualization. So this kind of framing can be used as a managerial tool as well. Okay, what we need: experimentation, network building, learning, legitimation, resource mobilization. These are the social actors, these are the networks. Why not to plan it? Or why not to facilitate these emergence dynamics that are already happening? You see, so it can be used as a managerial tool as well. So related actors can try to govern the circular business model innovation by working on and improving the suggested 7 mechanisms. So that this can enable them to improve their decision-making process, where to invest more, which type of resources need to be mobilized further, which are the most relevant social actors, which are the actors that need most of the protection mechanisms. So you see, they can be all interrelated. And hopefully this can further the development, diffusion, and adoption of circular business models in many different contexts. Okay. Saying that, I would like to stop the presentation. Well, I don't know if you have any questions or comments related to this transitions perspective that I have been trying to develop for circular business models and circular economy. Yeah, now I think we can open the discussion round. Thank you for listening and for attending. Yes, Isaac.
Thank you very much, Ebru. I'm not sure if I should, I have so many questions now. It was very interesting.
Yes.
So I can start. So I have a question with, let me see which page was it. When you have all these different, the interaction between the dynamic mechanisms.
Yes.
I would like to know a bit more, like maybe examples, you know, from if you know from the companies, like using experimentation or protection, or how does that translate, you know, into the situation?
Sure. Yeah, we can try to visualize this a bit. So I will say it again. And let's try to visualize it a bit together. So we have said these are interacting, right? For instance, let's start with visioning. How visioning can interact with resource mobilization. Okay, this is what literature suggests. So let's say, when we think of visioning, we can think of a strategy document. okay, of a company. It's, let's say, a big corporation which decides to integrate the circular economy and practices the circularity strategies. So it sets it in its strategy document. So after, Isaac is a strategy professor as well. So you know much better than I do. After setting the strategies, then ones need to understand also how they can be implemented, right? This can be one of the bottlenecks with the strategies, because we come up with, especially what we observe in the political organizations, they have come up with perfect strategy documents. Unfortunately, it happens the same for the big corporations as well. These then remain as the strategies that have never been implemented. Why not? Because we have never mobilized resources for that. Could be the human resources or could be the financial resources. You see, resource mobilization can be related to the visioning, strategy making. Or let's try to relate learning to visioning. How this big corporation come up with this strategy document? What was the motivation behind? Perhaps it attended to South Summit last week in Madrid, and it realized the importance of the integration of sustainability to its digitalization strategies. Or it realized the importance of integrating circular economy thinking to its overall strategizing processes. So it learned it at first order. Then it decided to make it into its company strategy. And based on that, it may decide to mobilize its resources or not. So you see, it's the basic example in terms of how they can be related to each other. And we can iterate that over these different dynamic innovation mechanisms in that sense. And of course, then we start realizing not only the big corporation, but also different actors come to scene, right? The big corporation has attended to the South Summit. With who they were communicating in the South Summit. They were into the networks of entrepreneurs and innovation ecosystems. So they had met with the startups, they had met with the university professors. I was there, for instance, giving a speech related to innovation ecosystems. Then they were able to also relate to the policymakers there. So we can also relate it to the network building there. Yeah. So we are trying to capture a systemic perspective here in that sense. I see a hand raised there as well. Yes.
Hi.
Hello.
Hello. First of all, thank you so much for the presentation. It was very clear and understandable. But my question is a bit out of curiosity.
Yes.
For instance, I've been searching on the circular economy, some empirical papers, some econometric modeling papers, but I couldn't find any. So this could be, for instance, on the firm level, or could be impact evaluations. I don't know whether it's due to some lack of data, but even though in that case could be some survey or primary data, even though it's not observational data, right? So if you have any idea, could you please share with me?
Sure, yeah. It's a very relevant and interesting question that has been raised with some practitioners, the industry workers. I have also talked to some other PhDs that have been running their PhD actually in Orchestra. It's a Basque competitiveness center, okay, located in Bilbao and San Sebastian. And what I have realized is that the reason why speculation could be that it's so hard to measure circularity. Okay, we are still not sure how to measure circularity. It's not very easily quantifiable, but it can be done perhaps building on the literature on life cycle assessment and this kind of quantification methodologies that has been adopted beforehand, and trying to perhaps reflect them to how to measure or how to quantify the circularities. But I think to start with, it would be more viable and feasible to focus on the organizational level, and then perhaps linking them at the industry level or at the regional level. I may try to suggest some papers for that. I remember some of them now. Maybe later, if you can drop me an email, or I think in the seminar flyer, my email was there. If not, I can drop it here. So
yeah,
that,
I got it.
Yeah, okay. If you can drop me an email, then I can try to forward some papers that can be helpful in that. But it has not been done in detail in a comprehensive way yet. That's the reason why. Because we are still struggling with defining circular economy, defining circularity strategies. So how can we quantify it, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Raquel, we have someone just entered the waiting room. Okay, a latecomer. Okay. Yes, please. Atsuki-san has a question.
Okay, sorry. Actually, my wife wants to ask a question about the.
Yes.
So we are listening together. I just wanted to, you mentioned about the performance of circular economy models. There is also social impacts on this, and somehow some of the impacts and effects are more like marketing of the and related to strategy and prestige of the company also. It's directly related to reputation also. Is that somehow a model to calculate the external costs, somehow to monetize the social impacts of the circular economy models?
Mm-hmm. Yes, so big corporations especially are working on different methodologies. This is widely, as far as I'm informed, this is widely covered in corporate social responsibility literature, as well as now there is a new literature emerging on ESGs, environmental social governance mechanisms, and they are trying to actually measure these externalities, like you mentioned. So this can be checked, but unfortunately still what we observe is that both related to sustainability or circular economy, we see a lot of greenwashing actually from the big corporations especially, because there are many incentives that can be used based on to which extent they integrate this kind of thinking to their business models, to their strategies, to their plannings, so that they can use some subsidies, they can use some hubs that are available, okay, at different levels of company functioning. So that's why they try to integrate it. But what reality happens is that there is no one explicit or particular circular economy or sustainability related practice in the company, although it's reported as such. So yes, there are some mechanisms that are helping us to measure this kind of externalities, but they are not commonly used as we are not observing many circular economy practices yet, especially for the big corporations. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Well, of course, there are some big corporations that are really investing in this. You know, this is let's try to avoid the generalization, but there are some also that use it as for the greenwashing, unfortunately. I see it said, yes, okay, to Raquel, okay. So Isaac, I don't know if you have a further question. If not, maybe we can conclude the webinar part.
Yes, I think we can then, because we have 4 minutes left. So I would like to have a final question, if I may,
okay,
and then we can close it. Especially the link with the business model that, you know, I think we coincide in that part as well. So the value capture and value appropriation, let's say, no, that it's hard to understand somehow. I would like to see your opinion in terms of circularity. I think I like examples, you know, so that also people in the audience, they understand in a real company how this works. Especially, you know, I work in service firms, so it's very hard because it's very intangible. But maybe with examples from manufacturing or the first sector, the difference between appropriability and capture could be useful for me to understand more about circularity.
Yeah, well, I would say, Isaac, this is a quite broad question, but I would try to explain it as such. Once the company try to integrate the circularity strategy to its value creation, let's say it includes these reuse and recycling practices. Let's think about a manufacturing facility, and let's assume that they are integrating these reuse and recycling practices for the wastewater treatment part, let's say. And what that may imply is that they will be recycling the treated wastewater, and they will be using it in manufacturing processes once again. And this will imply a cost reduction, right? related to its water use. So this would imply a reduced cost for the value that's offering to the market, its final product. Right? And this would imply a higher value capture from the consumer, from the user, because perhaps the company will not be reflecting it into its final price, but as the cost of production will decrease, then they will be able to capture more value. They will be able to capture they will be able to make more profit based on that. Even we can think of that, if they can increase the margin a lot in terms of cost reduction on the production side, on the manufacturing side, they could even think of reducing the price of their final product. And this would also add to their value delivery process. So the user also will enjoy that more. So they will also increase their differentiation factor, and they will be differentiating from the competitors. That will bring a competitive advantage. And still they can increase also the margin, the amount that they are, based on the amount that they are capturing. Basically, they can increase their profitability. I don't know if I...
Yeah, so if I understand correctly, then it would be very similar to service firms. The value proposition is against the market, no? Like, let's say they compete against other firms that are also circular or not, right? And based on that, they create, it's more strategy to create a competitive advantage. And then the value capture, I understand, could be not only money, but it could be this benefit to the planet, society, or it could be the knowledge that they get, not the learning or these other.
Could be, but these are not measured, these are not valued by the companies. In the end of the day, what they value is what they measure, and what they measure is the income, balance sheet, the OPEX, and so on and so forth. So it should be increasing their profit in the end of the day. That's why I underline this part related to value capture. For perhaps in the service industry, it would be related to the quality of the product that they are, quality of the service that they are offering, right? Related to adopting the circularity strategies. Perhaps the market positioning of the company would be improved, and this would bring more customers. So it would again increase its value capture part in that sense. I think this would be what they would be interested in. The other parts related to our broader social impacts, broader environmental impact, they are there. We always advocate for them, but in reality, they are not measured. And once they are not measured, they are not valued. That's the thing. Perhaps we start thinking of novel ways of defining GDP, novel ways of defining profit, novel ways of defining value, right? This can be one way, but this requires some time.
I think in my case, I'm an advocate to include these other values. So we also have another paper about circular economy, but in an organizational design. And we always consider this part. I think knowledge, for example, this for innovation, it should count, because if you only count the successes and the benefit or the revenues that you get from an invention that becomes an innovation that is accepted in the market, then you lose, all the value of the learning. So, I mean, it's a cost, but it's also maybe you can patent it. So, and I think you have in one of your mechanisms, you have protection. No?
Yes.
So let's say that you research, you innovate. Maybe you cannot go further because you don't have the knowledge or the money, whatever, but you can package it, then you protect it, as you mentioned. But this is a way to to capture the value. You know what I mean? So I think I understand what you say. I'm against this, let's say, scholars that only value the economic part, because otherwise it's not sustainable. So I think we have to include, it's hard to measure, but maybe this is our contribution as scholars, to
absolutely
how to measure the sustain, let's say the environmental and social benefits.
Yeah, these externalities thing and trade-off things are so important. But we also need to acknowledge what it is, right, in the market. So to make it into a reality, first we need to acknowledge and recognize what is it there. And then based on the strategies that are dominating the market, we should try to find some ways to penetrate this kind of mainstream practices. And advocates like us, hopefully, we will be fighting against the resistance to change in the market in that sense. Yes.
Okay, so I think, now we're over time a bit. It's 3:03, but I would like to thank everyone who have joined us. today, and especially our guest speaker, Dr. Ebru Susur, for this very interesting talk to make us understand, about circular economy, business model, and also presenting her, let's say, preliminary findings and results from her research on circular business models and sustainable transitions. Thank you once again, Ebru.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you, Isaac. Well, we have a question there on the chat. Isaac, from related to master as well, I think. I'm not sure.
Let's see.
And doing master, if you may.
Sure, Sertash, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing correctly.
Sertash,
but
yes.
Yeah, it would be great if you can also drop us an email, and then we can, of course, talk more about circular economy and how to join the master and other efforts that we can have as joint collaborations. Definitely, thank you.
Thank you very much.
I will also write my email.
Thanks
here.
a lot
I think I wrote,
for your time.
Yes, thank you Sertaç hocam. Hoşçakalın.
Görüşmek üzere. Memnun oldum.
Thank you guys.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye bye.